Gyms. There's the good, bad, and the straight up gnarly. Around 200 million people worldwide currently have a gym membership of some kind, whether it's a CrossFit gym, a commercial gym, or whatever the hell this is. But what did the first ever gym look like? And how have they evolved over the years? Who was the first guy to say, yeah, I'd love to be in a room filled with sweaty men to lift rocks? Well, tighten your lifting belts and grab your favorite Mike Israetel body pillow, because we're going back in time. Let's begin with the word itself, gymnasium, which comes from the Greek word gymnasion, and literally translates to place to exercise naked. And yes, it did certainly live up to that name, but in ancient Greece, gymnasia were part athletic training grounds, part social club, part school, part Discord server, etc. Basically, it was like their version of the YMCA, so a bit different from what we refer to as a standard gym. But if you dig a bit deeper, you will find references to something called houses of strength in ancient Persia, from as early as 3,000 years ago, where people trained for strength and martial arts. But even then, these strength houses weren't exactly available to the public, rather they were more reserved for military training. But let's be real, the Greeks got all of the credit because they made all of those buffed out statues. They might not have known what a pump was, but these guys looked pretty darn insane if their statues are anything to go by. And after the fall of the Greek and Persian empires, these gymnasiums were lost in time, alongside a few of their ideas like the halteres, which was the prototype for what would eventually become the dumbbell. If you actually want to find something reminiscent of a modern-day gym or anything like the old gymnasium, you have to move to the 1800s, where the German gymnast Friedrich Ludwig Jahn started a gymnasium called the Public Turnplatz, which basically means public gymnastics place, where men could do calisthenics, climbing, vaulting, and also preparing their bodies for the military and war. They developed something called Turnvereins, or gymnastics clubs, which were spread across Germany, and from there the idea of formal physical training with equipment got more traction. Since gymnastics were so difficult to master, many saw the value in using specific equipment to improve their general muscle strength. But even so, they didn't have any advanced equipment, just a few bars to hang on, and most of their work included simple bodyweight exercises just being done outside. And even with that, these facilities weren't always available to the public, as most gyms were owned by colleges who wanted to produce high-level athletes and scholars, kind of like the ancient Greeks. But if we fast forward another 50 years, strongman culture and physical culture in general would start to emerge. But before we get into that, a quick installment from today's video sponsor. Sleep is probably the most undervalued factor when it comes to muscle growth, and that's where today's sponsor Manta Sleep comes in. They sent me this neat sleep mask a few weeks ago, and I have to say it's a game changer for those of you who struggle falling asleep, or for those who just need to wind down first. Not only is it super comfortable to use, but it also removes any light source from entering your eyes. And it's a bit hollow around the eyes as well, so it doesn't press into your face like most other sleep masks. It also doesn't really matter if you sleep on your stomach, your back, or your side, it's perfectly comfortable from all angles. And it's a must-have if you, like me, live in Norway and during the summer there is constant sunlight, so getting some proper darkness is gonna help a lot. The strap is also very adjustable, and the sound mask, which I got, even has little earmuffs, which is gonna help a lot if you're trying to sleep on the go, like if you're on a plane or a bus. So if you're like me and you value your sleep, check out mantasleep.com and make sure you use code BACK10 for a 10% discount. I will leave a link in the description if you want to check it out. Now back to the video. Men like Eugene Sandow, often referred to as the father of bodybuilding, started gyms, advertised strength, posed with barbells and weird posing trunks, which at the time was considered more of a circus act than anything. And even though Sandow was mostly focused on his appearance, he wasn't the only guy interested in hoisting heavy things, as other strongmen like Louis Cyr would also emerge to showcase their incredible strength at events or circuses. But even then, these guys didn't really have any specific places or even equipment to train on. Dumbbells were always custom made, even though they were technically already a thing back in the 1700s, but they were never commercialized, because who the heck would want a big weight that you could just hold onto for no reason? So people had to be creative and made lots of different types of weights from trial and error. And most of the dumbbells never really took into account the size of the guys lifting, so some of them were made with handles so thick that only a few select individuals could actually lift them, like the Cyr dumbbell, which is still a part of modern strongman competitions. Most gyms were just sheds with really awkwardly shaped weights that a very select few had available in their backyard. and Sandow, alongside this other guy called Ludwig Durlacher, also made their own pulling systems to do pushdowns, pull-downs, rows, and whatever else. And with the first modern-day Olympics taking place in 1896, weightlifting was already on the program, even though it was overly simplified without any decent equipment or even places to really train, and gym equipment wouldn't really evolve much before the early 1900s. Until one man came along. George Hackenschmidt. Born in Estonia, this man was just a giga-chad of his era. Not only was he a professional wrestler and strongman, but he was also a philosopher and inventor. Not only did he invent the famous wrestling move, the bear hug, but he also invented the hack squat, and perhaps most importantly, he invented and popularized the greatest exercise known to man, the flat barbell bench press. But since the bench apparently didn't exist yet, it was more like a floor press. So these guys laid out the foundation for what gyms would eventually become, way before anyone had ever heard of a dumbbell. Then, around 40 years later in 1939, a guy called Jack LaLanne opened what's often called the first modern health club in Oakland, California. He also invented or even popularized many machines like the leg extension, amongst several other pulling movements, to bring resistance training into a broader public use. So by the mid-20th century, gyms started to look like, well, gyms. And this is where things get fun, because we started to see the birth of equipment, the tools that define what a gym really is. Now you had a bench press with an actual bench, peoples developed racks to help you hold the weight so you don't have to rely on somebody handing it to you. We had the Steinborn squat for many years, but with the invention of the squat rack and power rack, people could finally train their legs without risking death. Even if this guy still exists. We saw a massive boom in exercise selection as lifting weights became more popular. In the 1960s, powerlifting became an official sport. Bodybuilding had started gathering followers, and many soon realized that they could compile machines and equipment into a singular facility, and people would pay to go there. And with bigger competitions like the Mr. Olympia taking place, many were training specifically to compete in bodybuilding more than ever. And with that, machines which were safer and more reliable to use became the norm. Rudy Smith invented the Smith machine. Arthur Jones invented probably everything else. Each time somebody got themselves hurt on an exercise, an engineer somewhere probably got a new business idea. So by the mid-20th century, gyms weren't just gathering places for strongmen and niche athletes, but they became businesses, social phenomena, fitness clubs, and cultural icons. And after the 1970s documentary of Pumping Iron, it really took off.
I'm coming day and night. I mean, it's terrific, right?
People were inspired by Arnold and other larger-than-life personas who were featured on the big screen. Gyms became marketed for everyone, and with new knowledge on the importance of health and fitness, doctors, physiotherapists, and otherwise started recommending physical activity and lifting weights to rehabilitate and improve one's health. And because gyms became a staple in sports training, many capitalized on this and went to build gyms across the entire US, spreading over to Europe and the rest of the world slowly but surely. In the 1980s and 90s, we even started seeing group classes which were more tailored to women, who up to this point were basically left out of anything physical. Aerobics and cardio equipment drew in all sorts of people who just wanted to look like movie stars. Instead of training on your own, you could now join a group class where somebody more experienced led you through everything. And if you wanted to lift weights, there was a whole section dedicated to it, with trainers available for hire. The focus also shifted from training athletic performance and training for the military to being centered around looks, body fats, so-called body sculpting, and that's really where most of it left off. Gyms first became commercialized and then later spread out to become even more niche. Now we have CrossFit gyms, powerlifting gyms, old school gyms, more technically advanced gyms. And we have different price ranges, from Planet Fitness to Equinox gyms with smoothie bars, spa sections, and even sport halls. Gyms in general are, in my opinion, one of the best things to ever happen in modern days from a health perspective. They're fairly cheap, they're available across the globe, and you can choose if you want help or to start doing something on your own. But what might gyms look like 20, 30, or even say 100 years from now? I'm sure people will still be training for sports and such, but what about weight loss? What about health? Even though just being physically active outperforms a lot of medication, especially for stuff like high blood pressure, heart disease, and muscle and joint pain, the medical field is improving every day. And a lot of people who used to go to the gym for weight loss have virtually disappeared. Of course, the kitchen was always the biggest factor at play anyways, but I think we'll see a change in motivation for why people go there. Instead of going to build muscle or to lose fat, I think we'll see more people training in the gym to socialize or to improve their mental health. Perhaps it's gonna be more centered around just getting your dose of physical activity every day, as the physical job market turns into sedentary 8-hour days. And hey, in countries like China, India, most of Africa, and even South America, gyms are still a work in progress and aren't always as accessible or even as stacked as those in the US or Scandinavia. But with gym communities all around the world going strong, I think we'll still keep seeing them blossom and produce more and better gym equipment over time. And with the fitness industry growing a lot every single day in general, I think it will attract a lot more people to getting in shape and hopefully spread that positivity elsewhere. And imagine it all started from a single dude who just wanted to lift a rock. Thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed these types of videos and want to see more like them, let me know down below in the comments and make sure you subscribe for more weekly content. And I'll see you all next time.